If you were to travel back 10,000 years, long before cities, before written language, before even the idea of pets existed, you would not find a cat curled up by a fireplace. There were no fireplaces. There were no homes, not in the way we think of them. No walls built for comfort. No quiet corners softened by routine. There were only people moving across the land, following herds, seasons, and survival itself. Their lives were temporary, shaped by what the land could offer and how quickly it could change. And somewhere in the tall grass, watching from a careful distance, there were small wildcats, not companions, not friends, just other creatures living their own quiet, efficient lives. These early cats were likely Felis libica, the African wildcat, a solitary hunter, light-footed, sharp-eyed, built for silence and precision. It hunted small prey, mostly rodents and birds, and avoided larger animals whenever possible, including humans. And yet, somehow, those two stories, human and cat, began to overlap. Not with a grand moment, not with a decision, but with something much softer, something almost accidental. The story of cats and humans does not begin with domestication in the usual sense. There was no capture, no training, no deliberate breeding program, no moment where humans decided, this animal will serve us. Instead, it begins with a shift in human life that changed everything. The dawn of agriculture. Around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, in regions like the Fertile Crescent, an area spanning parts of modern-day Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Israel, humans began to settle. They planted crops such as wheat and barley. They built storage structures. They stayed in one place long enough for ecosystems to start reorganizing around them. This was a massive turning point in human history. Grain became central to survival. And where there is stored grain, there are always thieves. Rodents arrived first. Species like the house mouse, Mus musculus, and early rat populations quickly adapted to human settlements. Archaeological evidence shows that these animals became more common precisely when humans began storing food. For them, these early villages were not just convenient. They were ideal. A constant, predictable supply of nutrition with relatively few predators. And where there are rodents, there are hunters. Wildcats began to drift closer. Not because they were interested in humans, but because humans had unintentionally created the perfect hunting ground. This stage of the relationship is often described as commensalism. In ecological terms, it means one species benefits while the other is neither helped nor harmed in any major way. The cats benefited from abundant prey. The humans benefited, often without realizing it, from fewer rodents eating their stored food and spreading disease. No one planned it. No one negotiated. But a quiet agreement began to take shape. At first, the cats stayed at the edges. They hunted mostly at night, using darkness as cover. They remained cautious, avoiding direct contact. These were still wild animals, highly alert and deeply independent. But over generations, something subtle began to change. The cats that tolerated human presence, even slightly, had an advantage. They could hunt closer to grain stores. They had access to dense populations of prey. They expended less energy searching for food compared to their fully wild counterparts. This is where evolution begins to quietly reshape behaviour. Through a process called natural selection, traits that improve survival become more common over time. In this case, the key trait was tolerance, not friendliness, not affection, just a reduced fear of humans. Over many generations, these slightly more tolerant cats reproduced more successfully in human-adjacent environments. Their offspring inherited similar temperaments. This is one of the most fascinating aspects of cat domestication. Humans didn't domesticate cats in the same way they domesticated dogs. Cats, in many ways, domesticated themselves. Modern genetic studies support this idea. Domestic cats and African wildcats are still remarkably similar, both genetically and behaviourally. Compared to dogs, which show extensive divergence from wolves, cats have changed very little. Their brains, hunting instincts, and social behaviours remain close to their wild ancestors. They didn't evolve to serve humans. They evolved to live near humans. We can see evidence of this relationship surprisingly far back in time. One of the most well-known discoveries comes from Cyprus, where archaeologists uncovered a human grave dating to around 9,500 years ago. That included the remains of a cat. That detail matters. Cats are not native to Cyprus. The island had no indigenous wildcat population. This means humans must have intentionally transported cats there, likely by boat. That alone suggests value, not as livestock, not as pests, but as something worth bringing along, something useful, possibly even something meaningful. It's one of the earliest signs that this relationship had already deepened beyond simple convenience. As human societies expanded, so did the presence of cats. They spread along trade routes, through migration, and especially across water. Ships, in particular, became a key part of their journey. Imagine a wooden trading vessel thousands of years ago. It's packed with grain, dried food, textiles. It's crossing long distances with no easy way to restock supplies. Now imagine that same ship without cats. Rodents could destroy food stores, chew through ropes, contaminate water, and spread disease. A single infestation could threaten an entire voyage. Cats were not just helpful, they were essential. Sailors actively encouraged them aboard. Over time, cats became standard companions on ships, travelling from port to port, gradually establishing populations across Europe, Asia, and beyond. This is one of the main reasons domestic cats are now found almost everywhere humans live. In ancient Egypt, however, the relationship reached something closer to reverence. Cats were not just tolerated or valued, they were sacred. They were associated with the goddess Bastet, a deity linked to home, fertility, and protection. Killing a cat, even accidentally, could result in severe punishment. Historical accounts suggest that people mourned cats deeply, sometimes shaving their eyebrows as a sign of grief. Cats were also mummified, both as beloved companions and as offerings. Archaeologists have discovered entire cat cemeteries containing thousands, even millions, of mummified cats. This wasn't casual affection, it was cultural significance at a large scale. A once distant hunter had become a symbol of protection and domestic harmony. But history doesn't move in a straight line. In medieval Europe, cats, especially black cats, became entangled in superstition. They were sometimes linked to witchcraft, the supernatural, or bad luck. In certain regions, this led to widespread fear and, in some cases, the killing of cats. And here, history turns in a way that feels almost ironic. As cat populations declined, rodent populations increased. And with them came disease. While it's an oversimplification to say that the persecution of cats caused events like the Black Death, there is a broader truth underneath it. Reducing natural predators can destabilize ecosystems. Fewer cats meant more rats, and rats played a role in spreading fleas that carried plague bacteria. Once again, cats had been quietly doing a job that people didn't fully understand. By the time we reach more recent history, attitudes begin to shift again. In the 18th and 19th centuries, particularly in Europe, cats began to be kept more commonly as companions rather than just working animals. The rise of urban living played a role. Smaller homes, closer quarters, and changing cultural attitudes made cats more suitable as household animals. Selective breeding also began, though much later and less intensively than with dogs. This led to the development of distinct cat breeds, focusing mostly on appearance rather than behaviour. By the 20th century, cats were firmly established as companion animals in many parts of the world. And today, they are among the most popular pets globally, with hundreds of millions living alongside humans. And yet, even now, they remain different. Dogs were shaped by human intention, bred for tasks, for cooperation, for responsiveness. Cats are, let's say, less interested in that arrangement. Their brains still prioritize independence. Their social structure is flexible but not hierarchical in the same way as dogs. They can form bonds with humans, strong ones, but those bonds are not built on obedience. They're built on tolerance, familiarity, and, in many cases, genuine affection. But always, as you know, on their terms. From a biological standpoint, domestic cats still retain strong hunting instincts. Even well-fed cats will stalk, chase, and capture prey. Studies estimate that domestic cats kill billions of small animals each year worldwide, especially birds and rodents. This isn't cruelty, it's instinct, a behaviour shaped long before human homes existed. Today, cats live in a wide range of conditions. Some are deeply integrated into family life, sleeping on beds, responding to names, forming close attachments. Others live as semi-feral or fully feral animals, especially in urban environments. These cats often rely partially on human environments but remain largely independent, forming loose colonies rather than structured social groups. In many ways, this spectrum reflects their entire history. They exist between worlds, not fully wild, not fully controlled. If you trace the thread through all of this, there's a quiet consistency. Cats didn't reshape themselves to fit human expectations. They adapted just enough to coexist. They stayed close, but not dependent. Familiar, but not owned in the way other animals are. And perhaps that's why they continue to fascinate us. Because even now, thousands of years later, when a cat curls up beside you, purring softly, there is still something just slightly untamed about it. A flicker of instinct, a trace of distance, a reminder of tall grass, of night hunting, of a time before homes, before names, before belonging meant anything at all. A reminder that this relationship was never built on control, only on choice. And that, more than anything else, is what makes it feel a little mysterious. and a little bit magical. If you look at a sleeping cat, stretched out in a patch of sunlight, it's easy to think of it as something soft, simple, and entirely at ease with the world. There's a quiet rhythm to it. The slow rise and fall of breathing, the occasional twitch of a paw as if chasing something just out of reach in a dream. Nothing about it suggests complexity. And yet, beneath that calm surface, there is a story written in bone, muscle, and DNA that stretches back millions of years. Because a domestic cat is not just a companion. It is quite literally a finely tuned predator. To understand that, we have to step away from the living room for a moment and travel much further back in time. Long before humans stored grain or built settlements, long before cats wandered into our lives, their ancestors were already evolving into something highly specialized. Not just hunters, but efficient ones. Animals designed to succeed in short, decisive moments. The modern domestic cat, Felis catus, belongs to the family Felidae. This group includes some of the most recognizable predators on Earth: lions, tigers, leopards, and cheetahs. At first glance, it might seem strange to group a house cat with a lion. One fits into your arms, the other, very clearly, does not. But genetically, the connection is real. All modern cats share a common ancestor that lived roughly 25 to 30 million years ago. Over time, this lineage split into two main branches: the big cats, Panthera, like lions and tigers, and the small cats, Felis and related genera. Despite the differences in size and habitat, many core traits remained remarkably consistent. Sharp, retractable claws, teeth built for slicing flesh, forward-facing eyes adapted for depth perception and low light, a body designed for sudden acceleration rather than endurance. Even now, if you watch a domestic cat stalk a toy, you're seeing the same behavioral sequence used by a leopard in the wild: orient, approach, crouch, pause, and pounce. Scale has changed. Instinct has not. The closest wild relative of the domestic cat is the African wildcat, Felis libica. It still lives across parts of Africa and the Middle East, and if you saw one from a distance, you might not immediately recognize it as anything unusual. It looks familiar because it is. Genetic studies show that domestic cats diverged from African wildcats around 9,000 to 10,000 years ago, aligning closely with the rise of early agricultural societies. But here's what makes cats unusual among domesticated animals. The genetic differences between domestic cats and their wild ancestors are relatively small, much smaller than the gap between dogs and wolves. This tells us something important. Cats have not been extensively reshaped by human-directed breeding, at least not until the last few centuries. Most modern cat breeds are quite recent, often developed within the last 150 to 200 years. Before that, cats were shaped primarily by natural selection, not human preference. So for most of their shared history with us, cats have remained very close to their original design. You can see that design clearly in their anatomy. A cat's body is built for precision, not endurance, not brute force. Precision. Take the skeleton. Cats have an unusually flexible spine with more vertebrae than humans and highly elastic discs between them. This allows for extreme extension and contraction, especially during running and jumping. When a cat sprints, its spine acts almost like a spring, compressing and extending to increase stride length. This is part of what makes their movement look so fluid. Their shoulder blades are also different from ours. Instead of being rigidly attached by bone, they are connected by muscle. This allows each shoulder to move more independently, increasing stride length and enabling that smooth, gliding gait. It also explains something more every day: how a cat can slip through spaces that look impossibly small. If its head fits, the rest usually follows. Then there are the muscles. Cats are built for explosive power. Their muscle fibers are dominated by fast twitch fibers, which are ideal for short bursts of speed and strength. This is why a cat can go from complete stillness to full sprint in a fraction of a second. But there's a trade-off. Fast twitch muscles fatigue quickly. So cats rest. A lot. This isn't laziness, it's energy management. In the wild, a failed hunt costs energy. Too many failures can be fatal. So cats evolved to conserve energy until the exact moment it's needed. Stillness is part of the strategy. Their teeth tell the same story. Cats are obligate carnivores, and their dentition reflects that. They have sharp canines for gripping prey and specialized carnassial teeth that act like scissors, slicing meat into manageable pieces. Their jaws move mostly up and down, not side to side. They don't grind, they cut, tear and swallow. Even their tongues are specialized. A cat's tongue is covered in tiny backward-facing structures called papillae, made of keratin. These act like hooks, helping them strip meat from bone and also groom their fur with remarkable efficiency. Inside the body, the specialization continues. Cats are obligate carnivores, which means they rely on nutrients found almost exclusively in animal tissue. For example, they require taurine, an amino acid essential for heart function, vision, and reproduction. Unlike many other animals, cats cannot produce enough taurine on their own. They also depend on preformed vitamin A, which they cannot efficiently synthesize from plant sources, and arachidonic acid, a fatty acid found in animal fat. This is not preference. It is biological necessity. A cat cannot simply switch to a plant-based diet without serious health consequences. Their entire metabolism is tuned for processing protein and fat, not carbohydrates. If we shift from anatomy to genetics, things become even more interesting. The domestic cat genome has revealed insights into behaviour, coat variation, and sensory adaptation. For example, genes influencing coat colour and pattern, like tabby stripes or spots, are now well understood and can be traced to specific developmental processes in the embryo. But one of the most intriguing areas of study is communication. Unlike dogs, which were shaped by humans to be cooperative and responsive, cats developed their relationship with us more independently. And yet, they adapted. The clearest example is the meow. Adult cats rarely meow at each other. This vocalization is primarily directed at humans. Kittens use similar sounds to communicate with their mothers, and domestic cats appear to have extended this behavior into adulthood specifically for interacting with us. In a sense, they are using a form of communication we are more likely to respond to. Even more interesting, studies suggest that cats can modify their vocalizations based on experience. A certain pitch, a certain rhythm, a certain persistence that gets results. It's not language in the human sense, but it is communication shaped by interaction. Their perception of the world is also tuned for hunting. Cats have excellent night vision due to a structure in the eye called the tapetum lucidum, which reflects light and enhances their ability to see in low light conditions. Their pupils can expand dramatically, allowing more light in when needed. They also have a high density of rod cells in the retina, which are sensitive to movement. This comes with a trade-off. Cats don't see fine detail or colour as vividly as humans do. Their world is less about sharp edges and rich colour, and more about motion and contrast. To a cat, movement is everything. A flicker, a shift, a barely noticeable twitch. That's what matters. Their whiskers add another layer to this sensory system. These are not just hairs, they are deeply embedded sensory tools that can detect subtle changes in air currents and help cats judge distances and navigate tight spaces, even in near darkness. And it's worth pausing here for a moment, because when we talk about evolution, it's easy to think of it as something finished, something that happened long ago to produce the animals we see today. But evolution is ongoing. Even now, domestic cats are adapting to the environments we create. Urban living favours different behaviours than rural environments. Indoor cats experience different pressures than outdoor ones. Diet, social interaction, and even human preference continue to shape subtle changes over time. There is evidence, for example, that some urban animal populations are becoming bolder, more tolerant of noise, and better at navigating human-made structures. Cats are part of that shift. The cat sitting quietly beside you is not a simplified version of something wild. It is a continuation of it. A living system shaped by millions of years of refinement, adjusted just enough to fit into human spaces without losing its core design. And perhaps that's why cats feel so balanced. They are comfortable in our homes, but not defined by them. They accept our presence, but do not fully depend on it. They are, in a sense, visitors who chose to stay. And if you watch closely, even in the most ordinary moments, you can see it. In the way they pause before moving. In the way their eyes lock onto something you didn't even notice. In the quiet precision of a single step. It's not just a pet you're looking at. It's an ancient design. Still working, quietly and efficiently, exactly as intended. If you run your hand gently along a cat's back, there's a moment, just at the first touch, where something subtle happens. The fur shifts, not dramatically, not in a way that demands attention, but enough that you can feel it. A softness layered over something more structured. A surface that seems simple, yet is anything but. It's easy to think of fur as decoration, as something that makes a cat pleasant to touch or pleasing to look at. And yes, it does those things beautifully. But a cat's coat is not just for comfort. It is protection. It is regulation. It is communication. It is, in many ways, a quiet extension of the cat itself. To understand it, you have to look a little closer. because what seems like a single layer is actually a carefully organized system. Most cats have two main types of fur. The first is the undercoat. This is the soft, dense layer closest to the skin. It's made of fine, down-like hairs that trap air, creating insulation. That trapped air is what helps a cat maintain body temperature, especially in colder conditions. The second is the outer coat, often called guard hairs. These are longer, slightly coarser, and more visible. They form a protective layer over the undercoat, helping to repel water, shield the skin from dirt and debris, and reduce wear on the softer inner layer. If you've ever noticed how water beads on a cat's back rather than soaking straight through, you've seen this system working as intended. It's not fully waterproof, but it doesn't need to be. It just needs to keep the cat dry enough to function. And that matters, because for a small predator, being soaked is more than uncomfortable. It's dangerous. A wet coat loses its insulating ability. Body heat escapes more quickly. Movement becomes less efficient. In the wild, that can mean the difference between conserving energy and losing it too fast. Fur plays a central role in temperature regulation. By trapping air close to the body, the coat creates a buffer between the cat and its environment. In cold weather, this helps retain warmth. In hot conditions, the same structure can slow the transfer of external heat toward the skin. It's a balancing act. And cats adjust it constantly. You might notice a cat fluffing its fur slightly in colder conditions, increasing the amount of trapped air. In warmer environments, the fur lies flatter, allowing heat to dissipate more easily. This is one reason seasonal shedding happens. Many cats develop a thicker undercoat in colder months and shed it as temperatures rise. It's not random. It's a biological response to changing daylight and temperature patterns. This brings us to grooming. At a glance, grooming looks simple, repetitive, almost meditative, but it's doing far more than it appears. When a cat licks its fur, it removes dirt, loose hair, and parasites. But just as importantly, it redistributes oils produced by the sebaceous glands in the skin. These oils help maintain the coat's protective qualities, keeping it smooth, flexible, and slightly water-resistant. There's also a cooling effect. As saliva spreads across the fur and evaporates, it pulls heat away from the body. This is especially important because cats don't sweat across their bodies the way humans do. Their sweat glands are limited, mostly found in their paw pads. So grooming becomes a key tool for temperature control. That long, quiet session in a patch of sunlight isn't just relaxation, it's maintenance, a daily recalibration of the coat's structure and function. If you shift your perspective slightly, something else becomes clear. Fur is also a language. A cat doesn't need to make a sound to signal how it feels. The coat itself can change. When a cat is calm, the fur lies flat, smooth, unremarkable, a surface that reflects stability. But when a cat is startled, frightened, or threatened, the fur rises. This reaction is called piloerection. Tiny muscles at the base of each hair contract, causing the hairs to stand upright. The effect is immediate. The cat appears larger, more defined, less vulnerable. You'll often see this along the spine or in the tail, which can puff up dramatically. It's not just a reflex, it's a signal. To other animals, beware, I am not as small as I look. To you, hey, something has changed. Then there are the patterns. No two cats are exactly alike, and much of that individuality lives in the coat. The tabby pattern, with its stripes, swirls, or spots, is one of the oldest and most widespread. It's controlled by specific genes that influence how pigment is distributed during hair growth. The familiar M marking on the forehead, seen in many tabbies, is a consistent feature across different variations. Originally, this pattern served a clear purpose: camouflage. Stripes and markings break up the outline of the body, making it harder for prey to detect movement. In tall grass or dappled light, this can make a hunting cat nearly invisible. Even now, in a living room or apartment, that pattern remains, a leftover advantage from a very different environment. Other coat colours and patterns come from genetic variation. For example, orange coloration is linked to a gene carried on the X chromosome, which is why most orange cats are male. Tortoiseshell and calico patterns, which mix black and orange, are almost always female due to how those genes are expressed. White spotting, solid coats, colour point patterns seen in breeds like Siamese cats, all of these are the result of genetic mutations and combinations that have persisted over time. In more recent history, human-driven breeding has amplified some of these traits. Long-haired coats, like those seen in Persians, come from a recessive gene that affects hair length. Curly coats, like those in Rex breeds, result from structural differences in the hair shaft. Hairless cats, such as the Sphinx, still have a form of fine fuzz, but lack the typical coat due to genetic mutation. Despite all this variation, the underlying system stays the same. The coat still insulates, still protects, still communicates. There's one more layer to this. A cat doesn't just have fur, it feels through it. Each hair is connected to nerve endings at the follicle. This makes the coat sensitive to touch and movement. Even slight disturbances, air currents, nearby motion, a brush against an object can be detected. And then there are the whiskers. Technically, they are specialized hairs called vibrissae. They are thicker, deeply rooted, and highly sensitive. They can detect changes in airflow and help a cat judge distance, navigate tight spaces, and sense nearby objects even in low light. Cutting them isn't just cosmetic. It interferes with how a cat understands its surroundings. When you bring all of this together, the structure, the function, the sensitivity, the signaling, it becomes clear that fur is not a simple feature. It is a system, one that works constantly, quietly, without drawing attention to itself, keeping the cat balanced, protected, aware. And yet, for all its complexity, it still offers something very simple: comfort. There's a reason people are drawn to the softness of a cat's coat. Why petting a cat can feel calming, steadying, almost meditative. Part of it is physical: warmth, texture, rhythm. But part of it is something harder to name. Because when you touch a cat's fur, you're not just feeling softness. You're touching something shaped by evolution. a living layer refined over thousands of years. Something that has protected, expressed, and sustained the animal beneath it across changing environments and quiet histories. And maybe that's why it feels the way it does. Not just soft, but complete. If you watch a cat exploring a room, especially one it hasn't seen before, you might notice something curious. It doesn't rush. It doesn't rely on sight alone. Instead, it pauses. It leans forward slightly. Its nose twitches. Its whiskers angle outward, then subtly adjust as it moves. It's not just looking, it's reading the space. Because for a cat, the world is not only what can be seen, it is also what can be smelled, sensed, and felt in ways that are almost invisible to us. And at the centre of this quiet sensory system are two remarkable tools: the nose and the whiskers. A cat's sense of smell is far more developed than our own. Humans have around 5 to 6 million scent receptors. Cats have tens of millions, often estimated at around 50 to 80 million. That difference isn't just about strength, it's about resolution. A cat can separate and identify layers within a scent that we would experience as a single smell. To us, a room might smell like food or dust or something unfamiliar. To a cat, that same space is a layered record. Who has been here? What species they are? Whether they are familiar or unknown? How recently they passed through? Even whether they were stressed, calm, healthy, or ill. Scent carries information in the form of chemical signals, including pheromones, and cats are equipped to read them with surprising precision. There's a behaviour you might have seen without fully understanding it. A cat encounters a scent. It pauses. Its mouth opens slightly. The upper lip curls just a little, and it seems to hold that expression for a moment. It can look like a silent grimace. This is the flamen response. It's not confusion, it's analysis. By opening the mouth in this way, the cat draws scent molecules into the vomeronasal organ, also known as Jacobson's organ, located on the roof of the mouth just behind the front teeth. This organ is separate from the main olfactory system and is specialized for detecting pheromones, the chemical signals animals use to communicate. In that moment, the cat is doing something quite sophisticated. It is decoding information we cannot perceive at all. Not just what something is, but what it means. Scent is also central to how cats structure their world. Cats have scent glands in several areas of the body, especially around the face, chin, lips, and at the base of the tail. When a cat rubs its face against furniture, doorways, or you, it's depositing these chemical markers. This behaviour is often called bunting. It's easy to interpret it as affection, and it often is. But it's also organisation, a way of marking familiar territory, of layering the environment with a scent that says, this is known, this is safe, this belongs here. In multi-cat households, shared scent marking can even help maintain social harmony. Cats that share a common scent profile are more likely to tolerate each other. So the nose isn't just for exploration, it's for building a stable world. Alongside the nose, working constantly in the background, are the whiskers. At first glance, they look simple. long, slightly stiff hairs extending from the face, but they are among the most refined sensory tools a cat has. Whiskers, or vibrissae, are not like ordinary fur. Each one is deeply embedded in a follicle surrounded by a dense network of nerve endings and blood-filled tissue. This structure amplifies even the smallest movement. A whisker doesn't need to touch something directly to be useful. It can detect shifts in air. As a cat moves through a space, its whiskers pick up subtle changes in airflow caused by nearby objects. A wall, a piece of furniture, even a narrow opening will slightly alter how air moves around the cat's face. The whiskers register that change. This allows the cat to sense obstacles before contact. In low light or near total darkness, this becomes essential. The whiskers help build a kind of tactile map of the immediate environment, not visual, but spatial. A sense of distance, shape, and proximity. It's not sight, but it is awareness, and it's incredibly precise. The length of a cat's whiskers is also meaningful. They are typically about as wide as the cat's body. This isn't coincidence, it's calibration. When a cat approaches a narrow space, its whiskers act as a measuring tool. If the whiskers brush against both sides, the opening is likely too tight for the body to pass through comfortably. So the cat doesn't guess. It already knows. This is why cats are so good at navigating tight spaces without getting stuck. They've already felt the gap before committing to it. Whiskers aren't limited to the sides of the face either. You'll find them in several key locations. Above the eyes, helping detect objects approaching from above and triggering protective reflexes. Along the chin, assisting with close-range sensing, especially when eating or grooming. On the backs of the front legs, called carpal whiskers, useful during hunting, particularly when holding prey. Each set contributes to a more complete sensory picture, a layered awareness of the immediate world. And, like fur, whiskers also communicate. Their position changes depending on mood, focus, and intent. When a cat is relaxed, whiskers sit slightly to the side in a neutral position. When curious or engaged, they angle forward, pointing toward whatever has captured attention. When frightened or defensive, they pull back, closer to the face, reducing exposure and signaling discomfort. It's subtle, but it's consistent. And once you notice it, it becomes a quiet, reliable way of reading what a cat is feeling in the moment. There's also something important here that often goes overlooked. Whiskers can be overstimulated. If they are constantly pressed or bent, such as by deep or narrow food bowls, it can cause stress or discomfort. This is sometimes referred to as whisker fatigue, though it's less about exhaustion and more about sensory overload. It's one more reminder that these are not decorative features. They are active, sensitive instruments. If you step back and take all of this together, something becomes clear. A cat does not experience the world the way we do. Where we rely heavily on sight and sound, cats integrate scent, touch, and air movement into a continuous stream of information. They are not just seeing a room, they are sensing its history, its boundaries, its recent changes. They detect what has passed through, what remains, and what might shift next. And they do it without effort, without pause. It's simply how their minds and bodies are built to function. which brings us back to that quiet moment at the beginning. A cat stepping into a new space, pausing, whiskers forward, nose working gently. It may look like hesitation, but it isn't. It's interpretation. A careful reading of a world that, to them, is far richer and more detailed than it appears to us. And maybe that's part of what gives cats that sense of composure, that calm, deliberate presence. They're not moving slowly because they're unsure. They're moving slowly because they already know more than we do. If you sit quietly in a room with a cat, something interesting happens. At first, it might seem like nothing at all. The cat is still, relaxed perhaps, eyes half closed, breathing slow and steady. And then, without warning, one ear turns. Just slightly. A small, precise movement, as if responding to something you didn't notice. Then the other ear follows, adjusting, aligning, focusing on a sound that hasn't yet reached your awareness. You pause. You listen. But to you, the room is silent. To the cat, it never was. A cat's ears are not just for hearing. They are finely tuned instruments designed to detect, locate, and interpret sound with remarkable speed and accuracy. Where human hearing typically ranges from about 20 Hz to 20,000 Hz, cats can detect frequencies up to around 64,000 Hz. That means they hear sounds more than 3 times higher than we can. These are not abstract numbers. They include the tiny, high-pitched noises made by small animals like mice and insects. The kinds of sounds that barely exist in our world, but are loud and clear in theirs. This sensitivity is not accidental. It is the result of evolution shaping the cat as both predator and observer. Long before domestic life, survival depended on detecting movement that could not always be seen. A faint rustle in dry grass, the almost imperceptible scratching of claws beneath soil, the soft shifting of something alive but hidden. To us, these sounds disappear into the background. To a cat, they stand out, and the ears are built to capture them. Cats have 32 muscles in each outer ear. 32. Humans have 6, by the way. This allows a cat to rotate its ears up to 180 degrees, independently of one another. One ear can track a sound behind the body, while the other remains fixed forward. It's a kind of constant scanning, like having 2 directional microphones working at the same time. This isn't just hearing, it's active targeting. The outer ear, or pinna, acts like a funnel, collecting and directing sound waves inward. From there, vibrations pass through the ear canal to the eardrum, then through tiny bones in the middle ear that amplify the signal. Finally, the inner ear converts these vibrations into electrical impulses, which the brain processes almost instantly. But what makes this system so effective is not just sensitivity, it's precision. Cats are exceptionally skilled at locating where a sound is coming from. Studies suggest they can determine the direction of a sound within a few degrees, even when it is faint or brief. This ability, known as sound localization, allows them to build a kind of mental map of their surroundings based purely on audio information. Imagine a small animal moving just out of sight, hidden by grass or darkness. The cat doesn't need to see it. It listens. It calculates. And then, with a sudden, perfectly timed movement, it acts. That ability doesn't disappear in a domestic setting. It simply adapts. So when your cat suddenly becomes alert, ears forward, eyes fixed on a corner of the room, it's not random. It has detected something. It could be the faint movement of air in the walls, the sound of pipes shifting, or even ultrasonic frequencies produced by electronics that humans can't hear. In fact, many household devices emit subtle, high-frequency sounds. Chargers, televisions, LED lights. To us, they're silent. To a cat, they may form part of a constant, layered soundscape. Things we filter out, things we don't even realize are there. But for the cat, they are part of the ongoing flow of information. And ears are not only about sensing, they are also about communicating. A cat's ears are one of its clearest emotional signals, often shifting faster than the rest of the body. When a cat is relaxed, the ears sit upright and slightly forward, not rigid, just gently attentive. When something captures interest, the ears move forward more directly, narrowing their focus. The body may remain still, but there's a quiet sharpening, a readiness. If a cat becomes uncertain, the ears turn outward slightly, not fully flattened, but no longer neutral. This can be easy to miss, but it's often the first sign that something feels off. And when a cat feels threatened, the ears flatten completely against the head. This serves two purposes. First, protection. Flattened ears are less likely to be injured in a fight. Second, communication. It's a clear signal. Back off. These changes can happen in seconds, sometimes faster than we consciously register, which leads to something important. Cats are not constantly tense. They are not anxious by default. They are responsive. There's a difference. Their ears are always moving because they are designed to gather information efficiently. But this constant adjustment doesn't mean stress. In many cases, it means the opposite. Because they are so aware of their environment, they don't need to guess what's happening. They already know. They've sorted the sounds, mapped the space, and decided what matters and what doesn't. Another detail that often goes unnoticed is how well cats learn and remember sounds. They don't just hear, they associate. The sound of a food bowl being filled, the rhythm of familiar footsteps, the specific way a door clicks before it opens, even differences in tone within a human voice. Over time, these sounds become part of a structured pattern. Cats are excellent at recognizing these patterns and predicting what comes next. That's why a cat may appear instantly at the sound of a treat bag, even from another room. It's not coincidence. It's memory working with sound. At the same time, cats are also highly selective listeners. Constant, unchanging noises like the hum of a refrigerator or distant traffic are filtered out by the brain. This process, known as habituation, allows them to ignore what is stable and focus on what is new or changing. It's an efficient system, always updating, always prioritizing. So if you return to that quiet moment, a cat resting in a still room, ears shifting now and then, it begins to look different. The cat isn't doing nothing, it's listening. Not in a strained or effortful way, but as a natural state of awareness. Each small movement of the ear is a response, a subtle adjustment in an ongoing exchange between the cat and its environment. And most of that exchange happens beyond our perception, which may be why cats sometimes seem almost ahead of things, as if they notice something just before it happens, as if they are reacting to a moment that hasn't fully arrived yet. In a way, they are. Because while we wait for sound to become obvious, the cat has already heard it, already processed it, already decided what to do. All within a fraction of a second. And then, just as quietly, the ears return to stillness. The room feels calm again, even if, for the cat, it never truly was silent at all. If you've ever looked into a cat's eyes in a dimly lit room, you'll know there's something about them that feels different. Not just beautiful, though they are that. Not just expressive, though they can be that too. But something quieter, something harder to name. A sense that they are seeing more than you are. And in many ways, they are. A cat's eyes are shaped by a world that exists between light and shadow. Not the bright clarity of midday, but the softer, shifting tones of dawn and dusk. The hours when small creatures begin to move, when shadows stretch and overlap, and when visibility is never quite certain. This is where cats are most at home, and their vision reflects that. Let's begin with the pupils. In bright light, a cat's pupils narrow into thin vertical slits. It's a striking look, almost deliberate, like a fine line drawn with care. But this shape is not just aesthetic. It gives cats precise control over how much light enters the eye. As the light fades, those pupils begin to expand, slowly at first, then more fully, until the dark center of the eye becomes wide, round and deep, taking in as much of the available light as possible. Cats can dilate their pupils far more than humans can. In practical terms, this means they can gather significantly more light in dim conditions, allowing them to see in environments that would leave us struggling. They don't need full brightness. They need just enough. Behind the pupil lies the retina, the part of the eye where light is converted into signals the brain can understand. And this is where one of the most important differences appears. The retina contains two types of photoreceptor cells, rods and cones. Cones are responsible for colour and fine detail. They work best in bright light and allow us to see the world in rich, sharp detail. Rods are different. They are far more sensitive to light, especially low light, and they excel at detecting motion. But they do not capture colour with the same precision. Humans rely heavily on cones. Cats rely heavily on rods. This means that while a human might notice the exact shade of a surface or the fine detail of an object, a cat is more likely to notice something else entirely. Movement, contrast, change, a slight flicker, a shift in shadow, the almost invisible motion of something small and alive. The world, as a cat sees it, is not dull, but it is less about colour and more about patterns of light and dark, more about what moves than what simply exists. This is why a cat may suddenly become alert when nothing seems to have changed. To you, the room is still. To the cat, something just moved. And that matters. There is also another remarkable feature behind the retina, a reflective layer called the tapetum lucidum. Its role is simple but incredibly effective. When light enters the eye, it passes through the retina. In most animals, including humans, much of that light is absorbed. But in cats, the tapetum lucidum reflects the remaining light back through the retina a second time. This gives the light-sensitive cells another chance to detect it. A second pass, a second opportunity to gather information. This is what creates that familiar glow in a cat's eyes when light catches them in the dark. It's not that the eyes are producing light. They are returning it. And in doing so, they are making the most of every available fragment of illumination. Because of this system, cats can see in light levels that are roughly 6 times lower than what humans require. Not perfect darkness, but conditions that feel very close to it. Still, this ability comes with trade-offs. Cats do not see the world with the same sharpness we do, especially at a distance. Their visual acuity is lower. Objects far away appear less detailed, less defined. But this isn't a flaw, it's a specialization. A cat does not need to read fine detail across long distances. It needs to detect movement within a specific range, often within just a few meters. Within that range, their vision is highly effective, fast, responsive, focused on what matters most in the moment. There's also something subtle but important about depth perception. The forward-facing position of a cat's eyes gives it binocular vision, meaning both eyes overlap in what they see. This allows for accurate judgment of distance, which is essential for jumping, climbing, and hunting. When a cat leaps onto a narrow surface or calculates the distance to a moving object, it's not guessing. It's measuring, visually and instinctively, with remarkable precision. And yet, vision is never working alone. A cat does not rely on sight in isolation. Its understanding of the world comes from a combination of senses working together. Hearing fills in what vision cannot detect. Whiskers sends nearby obstacles and changes in air movement. Scent adds another layer of information entirely. So even in near darkness, when vision is limited, the cat is not disoriented. It adjusts, it compensates, it continues to move with quiet certainty. Now, beyond the mechanics, there is something else. Communication. A cat's eyes are expressive, but not in the exaggerated way humans often expect. Their signals are subtle and easy to misread if you're not looking closely. For example, direct unblinking eye contact can feel intense or threatening to a cat. In the animal world, a fixed stare is often a challenge. So when a cat looks at you and then slowly closes its eyes, something very different is happening. That slow blink is a signal of trust. A way of saying, without words, I feel safe enough to let my guard down. And if you return that slow blink gently, without forcing it, you may see the cat respond. It's not a trick. It's a form of quiet communication. There are also moments when a cat's gaze sharpens, the pupils widen, the eyes fix on something unseen to you, and the body becomes still. In those moments, the eyes are not simply looking. They are tracking, processing, preparing. It might be something small, a reflection shifting across a wall, dust catching light, a subtle movement that barely reaches your awareness. But to the cat, it is clear enough to matter. And then just as quickly, it's over. The pupils narrow. The tension softens. the moment passes. If you step back and look at all of this together, the structure of the eye, the way light is captured and reused, the balance between rods and cones, the role of movement, the communication, a clear picture begins to form. A cat's vision is not designed to mirror ours. It is designed for a different kind of life. A life that unfolds in low light. A life shaped by motion rather than detail. A life where timing matters more than clarity. And perhaps that's why their eyes feel the way they do when you look into them. Not mysterious in any supernatural sense, but deeply aware. As if they are always noticing the small things, the fleeting things, the changes that happen just before we realize they've begun. Because while we wait for the world to become obvious, the cat is already responding to what is subtle, already reading the shadows, already tracking the shift. And when a cat settles beside you, eyes half closed, blinking slowly, it's easy to forget all of that. Easy to see only stillness. But beneath that calm surface, those eyes remain what they have always been. Sensitive, adaptive, ready, even in the softest, quietest light. If you watch a cat move slowly across a room, not in a rush, not chasing anything, just walking, you might notice something subtle. There's no hesitation, no awkward shift of weight. Each step lands exactly where it needs to, as though the cat has already walked that path 100 times before, even if it hasn't. It's not just confidence, it's design. Because for a cat, movement is not something separate from thinking. It is thinking. It is awareness, balance, calculation and instinct, all working together so smoothly that it feels effortless to observe. And yet, under that calm surface, there is an extraordinary amount of coordination taking place. Let's begin again with the spine, because it is, in many ways, the center of everything. A cat's spine is not rigid like ours. It is flexible, almost fluid in how it allows the body to move. Each vertebra connects in a way that supports both strength and elasticity, giving the cat the ability to stretch long or compress tightly depending on what the moment requires. You can see this most clearly in motion. When a cat runs, its body extends forward, almost like a ribbon being pulled through the air. Then, in the next instant, it gathers inward, feet tucked beneath it, spine curved, preparing for the next push forward. This cycle repeats rapidly, creating both speed and efficiency. But even in slower movement, that flexibility is always present. When a cat walks, there's a gentle rolling motion along the back, a quiet wave of movement that travels from shoulders to hips. It's subtle, easy to miss, but it's part of what gives their walk that smooth, gliding quality. Nothing is stiff, nothing is forced, everything flows. Now, if we shift our attention downward to the legs and paws, the picture becomes even more precise. Cats walk in what's known as a direct register pattern, where the back paws step almost exactly into the footprints left by the front paws. This is not just neat, it's strategic. By placing their feet in the same spots, cats reduce noise, avoid unstable ground, and move with greater efficiency. It also means that fewer parts of the environment are disturbed as they pass through it. If you imagine a cat Moving through dry leaves, for example, stepping in the same place twice makes far less sound than stepping in two different places. It's a small detail, but it makes a difference. And cats are, above all, creatures of small, meaningful differences. Now, the paws themselves deserve more attention than they usually get. At first touch, they feel soft, cushioned, almost delicate, but they are remarkably complex. The pads on a cat's paws are made of thick, fatty tissue that acts as a natural shock absorber. This allows cats to land from heights that would be uncomfortable, even damaging, for many other animals. When a cat jumps down from a high surface, the impact is distributed through the pads, the joints, and the flexible structure of the limbs. The body absorbs the force gradually, rather than abruptly. This is why even a fairly large jump can end in near silence. A soft landing, barely a sound. But the pads do more than absorb impact. They are also sensitive, very sensitive. Within those soft surfaces are nerve endings that can detect texture, pressure, and even subtle vibrations. This means that a cat doesn't just step on the ground. It reads it. A slightly uneven surface, a faint tremor, a shift beneath the paw. All of this information feeds into the cat's understanding of where it is and how to move next. And then just above those soft pads, hidden when not in use, are the claws. Retractable, sharp, and carefully maintained. Unlike animals whose claws are always exposed, a cat keeps its claws sheathed most of the time. This protects them from wear and keeps them sharp for when they are needed. When walking normally, the claws remain hidden, allowing for silent movement. But when grip is required, for climbing, for holding onto prey, or even for steadying themselves on a slippery surface, the claws extend. It happens quickly, almost invisibly. And then, just as quickly, they retract again. This ability to switch between softness and sharpness is part of what makes a cat's movement so versatile. Now let's slow things down even further and look at balance, because this is where things start to feel almost improbable. Cats can walk along narrow edges, perch on small surfaces, and adjust their bodies mid-motion in ways that seem almost effortless. This is supported by a highly developed sense of equilibrium located in the inner ear. It constantly tracks the position of the head and body, allowing the cat to make tiny adjustments as it moves. But balance is not just about internal systems, it's also about external ones. The tail plays a significant role here. Think of it as a counterweight, constantly adjusting to shifts in movement. If a cat leans slightly to one side, the tail moves in the opposite direction, helping to stabilize the body. You can see this clearly if you watch a cat walking along a narrow surface. The tail moves gently, almost like a slow, deliberate pendulum. Not random, not decorative, but purposeful. Now, there's one aspect of movement that often captures people's attention more than any other. The ability of cats to land on their feet. It's often described as a kind of mystery, but it's actually a well-studied reflex. When a cat begins to fall, it doesn't panic. Instead, it initiates a sequence of movements known as the righting reflex. First, the head rotates to orient itself correctly. Then the front half of the body follows, twisting independently of the back half thanks to the flexible spine. Finally, the hind legs align, preparing for landing. All of this happens in a fraction of a second. The body adjusts mid-air, using no external support, just coordination and instinct. And when the cat lands, it does so with bent legs, allowing the joints and muscles to absorb the impact smoothly. It's not invincibility. Cats can still be injured by falls, but it is an extraordinary example of how their bodies are designed to handle sudden changes in position. Now let's return to something quieter. The way a cat moves when it is not hunting, not reacting, not doing anything in particular, just existing. There is a softness to it. A stretch that begins at the front paws and travels through the body, extending all the way to the tail. A slow arch of the back, followed by a release. These movements are not random. They maintain flexibility, keep muscles engaged, and prepare the body for whatever might come next. Even rest is active in its own way. And then there's the pacing. Cats move in rhythms. Short bursts of energy followed by stillness. Moments of alertness followed by deep rest. This pattern is built into their biology. They are designed to conserve energy until it's needed, rather than expend it continuously. So when a cat suddenly races across a room, leaps onto a surface, and then settles down as if nothing happened, it's not erratic. It's efficient. Now, if you take a step back and look at the whole picture, the spine, the paws, the claws, the balance, the reflexes, the pacing, it becomes clear that a cat's movement is not just graceful by chance. It is the result of countless small adaptations working together, each one contributing to a system that prioritizes silence, precision, and control. And perhaps that's why watching a cat move can feel so calming. There's a kind of certainty in it, a sense that nothing is wasted, nothing is rushed, nothing is out of place. Even in motion, there is stillness. Even in action, there is control. And as the cat crosses the room, places one paw softly in front of the other, and settles once more into quiet rest, it leaves behind almost no trace of having moved at all, except perhaps the feeling that something just passed through the space, something light, something deliberate, something perfectly at ease in its own body. If you place a small bowl of food in front of a cat, something interesting often happens. The cat doesn't rush. It approaches slowly, pauses, leans in, and takes a moment before eating. Sometimes it sniffs first. Sometimes it walks away only to return later. Occasionally, it seems to consider the food as though weighing a quiet decision. To us, this can look like fussiness, but it's not quite that. It's discernment. Because a cat's relationship with food is shaped by biology, instinct, and a long evolutionary history that has made it both highly specific and quietly complex. Let's begin with taste itself. Humans experience food through a range of flavors: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. These categories shape how we enjoy what we eat. Cats, however, experience the world of taste differently. Most notably, they cannot taste sweetness. This isn't a preference, it's genetic. Cats lack a functional receptor for sweet taste, which means that sugar, something humans often find intensely pleasurable, simply doesn't register in the same way for them. A piece of fruit, a drop of honey, a sugary treat. None of these hold meaning in a cat's sensory world. Instead, their taste system is more attuned to what matters for a carnivore. Protein, fat, the subtle chemical signals found in animal tissue. This aligns with something we've touched on before. Cats are obligate carnivores. Their bodies are designed to rely on nutrients that come specifically from animal sources. They require amino acids like taurine, which are found naturally in meat but not in plant-based foods. Without these nutrients, their health begins to decline. So their sense of taste has evolved accordingly. Not broad, but precise. Now, while taste is important, it is not the primary sense cats use when approaching food. That role belongs to smell. Before a cat takes a bite, it gathers information through scent. The nose, as we explored earlier, is capable of detecting a wide range of chemical signals, far more than we can perceive. This means that to a cat, food is first and foremost an aromatic experience. If something doesn't smell right, it won't matter how it looks. The cat may simply refuse it. This is why temperature can play a role in whether a cat accepts food. Slightly warmer food releases more scent, making it more appealing. Cold food, straight from a refrigerator, may seem less interesting simply because it doesn't offer as much olfactory information. Again, not fussiness, just a different way of experiencing the world. Now, when a cat does decide to eat, the process itself is quite distinct from our own. Cats don't chew in the same way humans do. Their teeth are designed for slicing, not grinding. The sharp premolars and molars act like scissors, cutting food into manageable pieces rather than breaking it down through repeated chewing. In many cases, a cat will bite, slice, and swallow with minimal chewing at all. It's efficient, direct, a reflection of how food would be consumed in the wild, where speed can matter. Now, there's also something interesting about how cats prefer to eat. Unlike animals that consume large meals infrequently, cats are naturally inclined towards smaller, more frequent eating patterns. In the wild, this would mean catching multiple small prey items throughout the day and night. Each meal would be relatively small, but consistent. This pattern still exists in domestic cats. Left to their own devices, many will return to food repeatedly, eating small amounts at a time rather than finishing everything in one sitting. It's not a lack of appetite, it's a rhythm. Alongside taste and smell, there's another factor influencing how cats approach food: texture. Cats can be surprisingly particular about the texture of what they eat. Some prefer soft, moist food. Others are more comfortable with dry, crunchy textures. These preferences can develop early and may remain consistent over time. It's another layer of selection, another quiet filter through which food is evaluated. And then there's water. Cats have a relatively low thirst drive compared to many other animals. This is partly because their ancestors obtained much of their hydration from the prey they consumed. Fresh meat contains a high percentage of water, which meant that drinking was less essential. This trait still exists today. Many domestic cats do not drink as much water as we might expect, especially if they are eating dry food. This can sometimes lead to health concerns, which is why encouraging hydration through fresh water or wet food can be important. Interestingly, some cats prefer running water to still water, a dripping tap, a small fountain. There's something about movement that signals freshness, perhaps an instinct carried over from environments where still water was more likely to be stagnant. Now, let's return for a moment to that quiet pause before eating. The hesitation, the inspection. It's not just about taste or smell, it's also about safety. In the wild, eating the wrong thing can be dangerous, so animals develop caution around food, especially anything unfamiliar. Even in a safe home environment, that instinct can remain. A new scent, a different texture, a slight change in temperature. All of these can trigger a moment of assessment, a pause, a decision, and sometimes a refusal. It's not stubbornness, it's instinct doing its job. Now, there's also something deeply routine-driven about how cats eat. They often prefer consistency, the same food, the same place, the same time. Changes to this routine can sometimes lead to hesitation or reduced appetite. This ties into a broader pattern in cat behaviour, a preference for predictability, for knowing what comes next. Food, in this sense, is not just nourishment, it's part of the structure of the day, a reliable point in the rhythm of life. And when that rhythm is steady, the cat feels more at ease. Now, if you step back and look at the whole picture, taste, smell, texture, instinct, routine, something becomes clear. A cat's relationship with food is not casual. It is thoughtful, selective, guided by systems that have been refined over thousands of years. Even in the simplest act, lowering its head, taking a bite, pausing, there is a quiet intelligence at work, not conscious in the way we think of it, but deeply embedded. And perhaps that's why feeding a cat can feel like more than just a task. It's an interaction, a small repeated moment where instinct and care meet, where something ancient, the need to hunt, to choose, to eat safely, meets something modern, a bowl placed gently on the floor. And in that meeting, the cat continues to do what it has always done. Evaluate, decide, and then, quietly, eat. If you live with a cat or have spent any real time around one, you'll know that their behaviour can feel puzzling. They sit in boxes that are clearly too small. They stare at empty corners. They ignore you completely, and then, moments later, demand your full attention as if nothing else exists. At times, it can seem random, even contradictory. But underneath all of it, there is a kind of quiet logic. Not always obvious, not always aligned with human expectations, but consistent in its own way. To understand cat behaviour, it helps to begin with a simple idea. Cats are both predators and prey. It's an unusual combination, and it shapes nearly everything they do. As predators, they are skilled hunters, focused, patient, precise. Their instincts guide them to stalk, to wait, to act only when the timing is right. Energy is not wasted. Movement is deliberate. But at the same time, as relatively small animals, they are also vulnerable. In the wild, larger predators exist. Sudden danger is always a possibility. So alongside that confidence, there is caution. Alongside curiosity, restraint. This dual role creates a constant balance. You can see it in small everyday moments. The way a cat enters a new space, for example. It doesn't rush in. It pauses at the threshold, observes, listens. Sometimes it takes a few steps, then stops again. The body stays low, movements measured, as if testing the ground beneath it. Only once the environment feels predictable does the posture change. The body rises. The movement becomes easier. This isn't fear. It's assessment. A quiet gathering of information before committing to action. And once you start noticing this pattern, you see it everywhere. Now, let's talk about one of the most recognizable aspects of cat behavior. Sleep. Cats sleep a lot. Often between 12 and 16 hours a day, sometimes even more, depending on age and environment. At first glance, it might seem excessive, but it makes sense when you consider how their bodies are designed to function. Cats are built for short bursts of intense activity, a sprint, a leap, a precise strike. These actions require energy, and that energy has to be conserved. So instead of spreading effort evenly throughout the day, cats alternate. Stillness, then action, then stillness again. Even domestic cats, who no longer need to hunt for survival, retain this rhythm. It's built into them. But not all sleep is the same. Much of what looks like sleep is actually a light doze. The body is relaxed, but not fully disconnected. The ears still move. The eyes may open slightly at a sound. Muscles remain ready to respond. It's a kind of resting awareness. The cat is relaxed, but never completely unaware. And then at times, they enter deeper sleep. The body softens fully. The paws twitch. Dreams, perhaps, flicker through their minds. Even then, it doesn't take much to wake them. Now, alongside rest, there is play. And play in cats is not casual. It is rehearsal. When a cat crouches low, tail still, body coiled, watching a moving object, it is practicing the same sequence it would use in a hunt. The slight wiggle before a pounce. The sudden burst forward. The grab, the bite. None of it is random. Each movement is part of an instinctive pattern. This is why play can sometimes become intense, even when the prey is just a feather or a piece of string. The brain doesn't fully separate play from hunting. And this is also why movement matters more than the object itself. A simple toy dragged across the floor in an unpredictable way can be far more engaging than something expensive that doesn't move at all. Because what the cat is responding to is not the thing. It's the behaviour of the thing. Now, let's turn to something softer. Affection. Cats show affection, but often in ways that are easy to overlook if you're expecting something more obvious. A cat may rub its head against you, leaving behind scent from glands around the face. This isn't just a greeting. It's a way of marking you as familiar, as part of its environment. It may sit near you, not necessarily touching, but within a comfortable distance. It may follow you quietly from room to room, not asking for anything, simply choosing to remain close. These are not small things. They are deliberate. They reflect trust. And then there's purring, often associated with contentment, and often that's true. But Purring is more complex than it first appears. Cats also purr when they are stressed, injured, or trying to soothe themselves. The frequency of the vibration is thought to have a calming effect, possibly even supporting healing processes in the body. So, purring is not just a signal to others, it's also something they do for themselves, a kind of internal regulation. There are behaviours that seem more confusing on the surface. Why does a cat knock objects off a table? Why choose a small box over a comfortable bed? Why suddenly sprint across the room with no visible cause? Each of these begins to make more sense when viewed through the lens of instinct. Knocking objects over is often a form of exploration. Cats don't have hands. They use their paws to interact with the world. When they tap an object and it moves, falls, or makes a sound, they learn something. Cause and effect. Some cats also repeat this behaviour because it gets a reaction. A human voice, movement, attention. Even negative attention is still interaction. Boxes, on the other hand, offer something very specific. Enclosure. A confined space reduces exposure. It limits the number of directions from which something unexpected can approach. This allows the cat to relax more fully. It's not about comfort in the way we define it. It's about security. And those sudden bursts of energy, often called zoomies, fit neatly into the pattern we talked about earlier. Energy builds during periods of rest, and then suddenly it releases. A short, intense run. A quick loop through the space. And then just as quickly, stillness again. It looks chaotic, but it's part of a rhythm. Now, there's also territory. Cats are territorial, but not always in an aggressive way. They organise space. Certain areas become associated with certain activities. A high perch for observing, a quiet corner for resting, a specific spot for eating. They map their environment through repetition and scent, rubbing against furniture, walking familiar paths, choosing the same resting places again and again. These actions reinforce a sense of structure, and within that structure, there is safety. When something changes, new furniture, new smells, new people, that structure is disrupted. The map no longer matches the environment, so the cat pauses, reassesses, rebuilds that map over time. This is why adjustment can take a while. Not because the cat is resistant, but because it is recalibrating its understanding of the space. Now, something else that plays a quiet but powerful role is routine. Cats notice patterns. They learn the timing of events. When food appears, when people wake up, when the house becomes quiet. And once those patterns are established, they rely on them. Predictability reduces uncertainty. And when uncertainty is reduced, the cat can relax more deeply. But within that structure, there is still individuality. Each cat expresses these instincts in its own way. Some are more social, actively seeking contact. Others are more reserved, preferring distance but still forming strong bonds. Some are bold and curious. Others are cautious and slow to explore. These are not contradictions. They are variations, different expressions of the same underlying instincts. Now, if you take all of this together, the balance of predator and prey, the rhythm of rest and action, the role of play, the quiet forms of affection, the importance of territory and routine, a clearer picture begins to form. Cat behaviour is not random, it is structured, guided by instinct, shaped by experience, expressed with a kind of quiet consistency. And perhaps that's why it can feel so intriguing, because it doesn't announce itself, it doesn't explain itself, it simply unfolds. A cat sits beside you, not asking, not insisting. A cat watches a space you hadn't even noticed. A cat chooses a moment, a movement, a place, with quiet certainty. And if you spend enough time observing, not rushing to interpret, not trying to impose meaning too quickly, just watching, you begin to see it. The patterns, the repetition, the logic beneath the surface. It's not mysterious. Not really. It's just different. A way of being that is measured, efficient, and deeply connected to the environment. And once you start to understand it, even a little, the behaviour that once seemed puzzling begins to feel almost obvious, as if it had always made sense. You just needed to slow down enough to notice. If you sit quietly with a cat, especially in the evening when the world begins to soften, you might start to notice something. Not what the cat is doing, but what it is saying. Because although cats are often described as silent creatures, they are not truly silent at all. They simply don't fill space with sound in the way humans do. They don't speak continuously, don't lay a noise over every moment. Instead, they choose. They allow silence to exist, and then, when necessary, they place a sound into it. A single note in a quiet room. And that note, however small, carries meaning. Let's begin again with the purr, but this time a little more slowly. A purr is not just a sound you hear, it's something you feel. If a cat is close enough, you can sense the vibration through its body. A steady, rhythmic hum that seems to come from deep within, not just the throat, but the chest. The whole animal gently resonating. For a long time, people assumed purring meant one thing: contentment. And often, it does. A cat, curled beside you, warm, still, producing that soft vibration, is very likely relaxed and comfortable. But purring is more versatile than that. Cats also purr when they are unwell, when they are recovering, when they are anxious, or even when they are close to giving birth. In these moments, the purr takes on a slightly different role. It becomes a tool, a way of regulating their own internal state. The exact mechanism behind purring is still not completely understood, but it involves rapid, repeated contractions of muscles within the larynx, creating that familiar vibration. What's fascinating is the frequency of that vibration. It often falls within a range that has been associated with tissue healing and bone strength in other contexts. While research is ongoing, there is a growing sense that purring may have physical benefits for the cat itself. So when a cat purrs, it may not only be expressing a feeling, it may be supporting its own well-being. A quiet, built-in system of comfort and repair. Now, if the purr is inward and continuous, the meow is outward and deliberate. And this is where things become especially interesting. As we touched on before, Adult cats rarely meow to one another. Kittens meow to their mothers, but as they grow, that form of communication fades within cat-to-cat interactions. But with humans, it returns. And it evolves. Over time, cats have developed a range of meows that function almost like a customized language for interacting with people. Some are short and simple. A quick sound, almost like a question. Others are longer, more expressive, rising and falling in pitch, carrying a sense of urgency or insistence. Some are soft and barely audible, more like a murmur. Others are loud, clear, and impossible to ignore. If you listen carefully, you may begin to notice patterns. A certain meow that always appears at feeding time. Another that signals a request to open a door. A different tone used as a greeting when you enter a room. These are not random. They are learnt. Cats observe what works, which sounds get attention, which ones lead to a response, and then they repeat those sounds, refining them over time. In a way, your cat is training you as much as you are understanding it. There is a particular quality to some meows that is worth pausing on. A slightly higher pitch, a softer tone, something that feels almost familiar. Some researchers have suggested that certain cat vocalizations may mimic aspects of human infant cries, tapping into a natural human sensitivity to those sounds. It's subtle, not exact, but enough to catch attention, to trigger a response. Whether intentional or simply the result of evolutionary overlap, it's another example of how cats have adapted their communication to fit into human environments. Now, let's move to something gentler. The trill. It's one of the softer sounds a cat makes, a kind of rolling, almost musical note that sits somewhere between a purr and a meow. It's often used as a greeting, a quiet acknowledgement, a way of saying, I see you, I'm here. Mother cats use trills with their kittens, guiding them, encouraging them to follow. And when adult cats use this sound with humans, it carries that same gentle quality. It's not a demand, it's an invitation, a moment of connection. Then, on the other end of the spectrum, we have the sharper, more immediate sounds. The hiss, the growl, the spit. These sounds are not about connection. They are about distance. A hiss is sudden and sharp, a burst of air that startles and warns at the same time. It's often accompanied by a change in posture, the body tensing, the ears flattening, the fur lifting slightly. It says, very clearly, stop, not closer. A growl is deeper, more sustained. Less of a startle, more of a steady warning. These sounds are not used casually. They appear when a cat feels threatened, cornered, or pushed beyond its comfort zone. And they are effective precisely because they leave little room for misunderstanding. Now, there is a sound that sits somewhere in between all of this, both familiar and slightly strange. The chattering or clicking sound cats make when watching birds or other prey through a window. It's quick, almost staccato. The jaw moves rapidly, producing a series of small clicks. It can look and sound almost mechanical. And while we don't have a single, definitive explanation for it, there are a few strong ideas. One is that it reflects frustration, the instinct to hunt triggered, but with no way to act on it. Another is that it may be related to the bite used to dispatch prey, a kind of rehearsal or reflex. There's even a theory that it could mimic the sounds of certain prey, though this is less widely supported. Whatever the exact cause, it's a moment where instinct surfaces clearly. A glimpse of the hunter beneath the calm. Now, beyond individual sounds, there's something even more subtle. The way sound and silence interact. Cats do not rely on constant vocalization. They don't fill every moment with noise. Instead, they allow silence to carry most of the experience. And when they do make a sound, it stands out. It matters. A single meow in a quiet room draws attention. A sudden purr shifts the atmosphere. A soft trill changes the tone of an interaction. This selective use of sound makes their communication feel intentional, measured, and it encourages a different kind of listening. Not passive, but attentive. There's also something worth noticing about how cats respond to human voices. They may not understand words in the way we do, but they are highly sensitive to tone, rhythm, and repetition. They learn the sound of your voice, the difference between calm and tension, the patterns in how you speak when you are relaxed, when you are calling them, when you are upset. And they respond accordingly. A soft, steady voice tends to invite calm. A sudden sharp tone can create distance. It's not about language. It's about feeling. Now, if you take a step back and listen to a full day in the life of a cat, you might notice how little sound there actually is. Long stretches of quiet, moments of stillness, and then occasionally a sound placed gently into that quiet. A purr, a meow, a soft trill. Each one brief, each one enough. And perhaps that's why cat sounds feel the way they do. They don't overwhelm. They don't compete with the world. They simply exist within it, lightly, deliberately. A kind of quiet conversation that unfolds in small pieces. And if you're listening, truly listening, you begin to understand. Not every detail, not every nuance, but enough to feel the meaning behind the sound. A presence, a request, a moment of connection, all carried on a single, carefully chosen note. And then, just as gently, returning to silence.